Perfect. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Oh my gosh, thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Awesome. Well, I've got to say, it's been quite the stablecoin day here. And
Yeah.
you're doing something with stablecoins, aren't you?
We are doing something with stablecoins.
Talk me through what you're working on.
Yeah, for sure. We were incredibly proud and excited to announce last week in partnership with Stripe, Visa, and a number of others, we are working on stablecoin-backed cards. I think folks in this room are very intimately aware, but around the world, you can't take for granted that currencies will be stable. It's a problem for businesses that are operating in these countries, whether they're local to it or global companies. I think as the world, the internet made the entire world feel very global. You can buy things in lots of countries. Currencies did not become that way. Money did not become that way. And I think it's a really interesting partnership where we think there's a path where companies can effectively operate wherever they are locally without taking extreme currency risk, be able to spend on the go, have it be backed by stable coins.
Right, well, you're starting in Latin America, right?
Yes.
Yes, okay, because I think other people in this room, too, have been executing in that space, too. So why that market is one, like you said, that fits this kind of spot that you're looking for, where
sure.
Lots of local businesses wanting to transact freely, right? Or
That's exactly right, and it's both. It's this interesting dynamic where very vibrant, fast-growing economies, lots of movements around currencies, but also I think very forward-thinking regulators as well. And so we're excited. We're starting there, but I think it's going to go much further beyond over the coming years.
And you said partnerships with Visa. So I was going to say you work obviously with Visa, but you're not pulling away from the. Are you pulling away from the traditional financial rails by going to stable coins? Like
when I think about a lot of their classic,
they're kind of in it too, right? So
yeah.
How much are you pulling away?
It's a funny one. I mean, like I think about how they try and position themselves. Visa is everywhere you want to be. I think they aspire. No matter what currency people are transacting in, to be there, whether that's dollars, euros, pesos, reais, or maybe a stablecoin back version. I think they want to be operating in those currencies too. But yeah, you're right. So I think a lot of, I think even speaks to where Ramp is. While we're in a room filled with fintechs and we think about financial innovation, a lot of really what we want to do is allow people to transact however they want to, but have those dollars and hours go further. And so we're open, agnostic, happy to work with really the best partners.
For sure. So not kind of embracing wider rather than going somewhere else, but
yeah.
I guess also, separately from your stablecoin launch, congratulations, by the way. You've had an exceptionally busy year. You had your Super Bowl ad, you have these cards, you have your secondary sale with your new valuation at $13 billion. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. What's the internal story here? There's lots going on. What are you focused on right now?
It's in some ways, I think we're just very simple people, very same focus.
Simple, except all these things.
We're doing a lot of stuff, but there's one basic idea, which is like Ramp exists to help companies spend less money and spend less time. Everything we do is centered around this, whether it's any of those or some manifestation of bringing that to life. And I think when you kind of step back, look, for the average American business, they have an 8.5% profit margin. And that means that, saving $1 isn't equivalent to making $1. $1 saved is about 12 earned at that. And so there is enormous leverage to businesses to finding and wringing out cost. And so we're obsessed with that. When we launched just over 5 years ago, we helped the average business save about 2% per year. Now it's about 5%. We think we can drive this dramatically up. We also think a lot about productivity. We certainly move money, but I think of ourselves more as a productivity company, and it's important because when you look back,
a productivity company. So
yeah.
like every aspect of the business, saving time, saving money. Like what is a productivity company when you put it that way?
Yeah. I mean, it's a couple of things. I mean, one, when you think of like one of the simple abstractions, today most people don't use Ramp, have this experience of you buy something and then you have the privilege of going into some other tool a month later to upload all your receipts, retag all the information, you send it off to an accountant who redigitize it, sends it somewhere else. It's hours of work just to go and buy some dinners, go to some hotels, stuff like that. With Ramp, it's pretty effortless. You tap a card, the expense report largely does itself. The books largely close themselves, and so what we're really trying to do is give people time back. What used to take them hours, let's do in minutes, seconds, no times at all. And so it's quite literally compressing time. It's like almost the classic sense. Like I think. I can't help it. I was an econ major in college. I sort of think about the stats of like in the 60s, the average American worker, if you flash forward to the next year, produced 3% more stuff per worker per year. Over the last decade, that fell, and that's fallen consistently over 60 years to, call it about 1%, 1.5%. And I think this has all sorts of ramifications for society writ large, for people. I think it drives kind of depressed wage growth. And I think that if you can go and quite literally have every hour worked for people go a lot further, I think that's great for companies. I think it's great for people doing work. The work can be more meaningful. And so we move money, but our obsession is it's like saving time, saving money. Hopefully that helps.
For sure. I mean, obviously, when I hear productivity, I think about, generative AI tools making things a lot easier.
Yeah.
A lot of people combine those two these days. So where are you seeing, your customers utilize your AI products the most? Talk me through some of your most popular AI features and what you're doing internally versus externally for your customers.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's been transformative for our business. I mean, one, anyone who's used Ramp kind of knows it's not really possible to use Ramp without some form of AI. From as simple as, let's say that you're out, at a restaurant, a business dinner or something, you tap a card, you'll get a text from Ramp within seconds of the transaction with suggestions of memos that Ramp is actually generating for you based on the context of the transaction, which you've written before, maybe a calendar integration. We can suggest other attendees where you went, and so you can go and say, this is a business dinner with X, Y, and Z, type back 1 and you're done, versus you needing to go write that out, and so it shows up in memos. It's translating this unstructured transaction data into your general ledger, into accounting codes, and so we'll go and match that. It's OCR, so you can upload one or hundreds of invoices. It can read just as well as humans and accountants can. We itemize all of it, and then you can go send the invoice off. To much more interesting things like price intelligence. We're able to look across hundreds of millions of transactions and go and show you here's how your price compares to in aggregate prices other companies are paying. I think that the most interesting places, so those are the very known parts, the things that we're very interested in. I think if you sort of step back and you think about like procurement software, it's really kludgy. Like it almost takes like a degree to learn how to use these advanced, crazy SAP, Coupa, like these very complicated tools. And I think we're in this world where, I don't know how else to say it, like computers can think, they can read, they can see, you can talk to them. I think there's chances to really radically rethink interfaces themselves to take things that were very complicated and make them simple. And so we're thinking a lot about that on the product side, but ultimately do your expenses, do your books, help you earn higher yield, and then internally, have the most productive team out there. And so if you show up, whether you're a large account or small mid-size, our account managers have gone effectively. AI has read all the past transcripts, read the news, what's going on in your company, who's been hired, and can show up with actual plans of like how to actually go and get more value. And so I think even service is going up.
For sure, yeah. I think I read on one of your posts on your announcements that you're spending, of like 50% of that spend of your, goes to R&D and procurement, right? So you're clearly investing a lot in that. On the flip side, AI can make all of this so much more efficient, but if you're handling expenses, I'm sure fraud being enhanced with AI is potentially a concern too. So where are the places that you're kind of working through this or thinking about this on the product side?
Super good question. So there, two super interesting sides to the question. One, I just, I don't want to undersell the average software company. These companies that invest in software, let alone fintechs, financial services companies, invest something like 15% is often at the high end of revenue of R&D spend ultimately into engineering R&D, making the product better. Over 50% is enormously larger, and so people often associate Ramp for very high engineering velocity, the product is getting better, and if you feel like it's getting better fast and often, it's because it just is. We're spending a lot more behind it. And I think for most companies, I mean, we serve well over 30,000 companies from tech companies here in San Francisco to companies pouring concrete, to restaurants, to hospitals. And I think that's often these kinds of companies don't have large engineering teams.
Yeah, that's a wide range of technical capabilities on your customer side, right?
Totally. Anyone who spends money needs cards, needs to be able to pay bill payments, needs to keep their books. And so in some sense, a lot of that spend is meant with the philosophy in mind of we can be these organizations, finance teams, engineering teams. We can actually go and deliver products that will use AI to do their books, use AI to automate their expenses, use AI to show them ways to cut costs and make their business better. And so some of this is actually, can the form factor of Ramp actually serve as a great tool to actually get the benefits of world-class engineering teams building for businesses that have never had it. And so that's on the proactive side, and I think you're right. On the fraud side, it's this very interesting time.
The other side, yeah.
Yeah, I think that as great as AI is for engineering teams and people to be more productive, I'm sure it makes criminals radically more productive too.
Think about your like receipt tool, which is very impressive. Can use like AI to read and expense receipts with just direct photos. Like that seems also like something someone could make a ChatGPT receipt and file that too.
One of the more viral tweets even from like the past 2 months was huge advancements in the SOAR model. People said, "Oh, I can generate receipts that look really real," and then we spent the next 24 hours going and building all kinds of meta detection to go and actually find AI-generated receipts and reject it. And so there's cat and mouse and all this stuff too. But I'm sure maybe the Russian VCs are rejoicing too, on their side of the world. But,
yeah. Speaking more of fraud, I know that you can't talk too much about it, but with GSA, you've submitted for this pilot program, right, with kind of adding these rails for government spending. Why enter the government right now? Do you think there's widespread fraud in the government? How are you, looking at this? Do you want to help? Like, what's the thought process here?
Yeah. So look, I think for me, like, I don't have a view on fraud and how that works. Ultimately, I think like the Government Accountability Office has been putting out reports for years. They generally put out reports to the effect of, fraudulent payments are something like 4% of payments per year or their estimates. But, we do have a view on waste and how companies can be more efficient. And I think
waste versus fraud.
Yeah, is my take. Like, and I think they're not necessarily like. I don't, for example, in a private company to go and buy 200 licenses to a tool that you signed up for and aren't using, I don't think it's fraud, but it is wasteful. And there's forms of monetary waste as well as time waste. And I think when you look at the systems that the government is using today for spend, it was state of the art for about 20 years ago. Is probably, and I think if like the military was using propeller planes, the Air Force was using it in an age with jet, people would say like, why aren't you using the best tools? This is not using modern technology to achieve the ends that are possible. I think there's similar things happening where functionally policies that dictate what agencies, government workers should spend don't drive how the cards really actually behave with a lot of manual intervention, which is pretty imprecise. They don't really drive the systems. There's a lot of manual work to take that, go re-upload receipts, don't really connect that deeply into the accounting softwares. And you think about what Ramp does is it collapses it. And so your expense policy actually drives what expenses are allowed, what are not. It can go and automate your expenses. And I actually think the vast majority of folks working in government are like really well-intentioned, great, working super hard. And I think it's really sad that they're spending actually hours every week and month instead of being focused on public service, doing really low-value expense reports. And so I would say when you kind of zoom out and think about it mathematically, there's something like $40 billion per year in spend on the GSA Smart Pay program.
That's the card issuing payment, that program where government workers can
spend
have their own
cards.
cards, spend cards, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's travel, it's procurement, it's fleet, it's all kinds of use cases. But when we look at Ramp data in the typical year adopting Ramp, we cite 5% of the savings. That's the low end. It's very normal that companies are able to mathematically we can show that they cut out costs of 5 to 15%. And you think about the scale of what that is across what's getting spent not just this year, but over the next decade. I think it'd be really exciting to be a part of helping these dollars that all of us here in the States are paying for go a lot further, actually have more impact. So that's why we're thinking about it, and happy to put our hat in the ring. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. I mean, the government's one part of it, but of course you have a lot of data that you can collect from your private sector customers too, right? And one thing that I do enjoy about your platform is your data scientist, you hire an economist, you look at these kinds of things. I'm sure you've been looking a lot into AI, but what are kind of your customers or these data sources that you're collecting here? Where are you seeing trends? Where are you seeing really big breakthroughs in how people are spending on AI right now? Obviously, it's a big focus area for you with all your products and being AI first. So what are you seeing?
It's, look, if there's any evidence, I'm a visitor here in San Francisco. I think there's real revenue data that's substantiating all the excitement around AI. And look, to be more precise about it, I think at Ramp, it is somewhat tech forward and more modern folks who are adopting it. But it's not dramatic. I mean, our representation is, it kind of looks like the industries and businesses of the US. 40% already of all customers are paying for one of the large language models. So this can be OpenAI subscriptions, Anthropic, XAI.
Gemini, would that count? Okay.
Yeah.
So 40% are already paying for something.
At least where it's like monthly they're doing it.
Yeah.
And if you looked at these stats,
that seems almost low compared to what I've been, would guess at this point. Yeah.
I mean, in tech, by the way, it's over 2/3.
Okay.
If you look at it writ large, and it is absolutely exploding. And still the dominant leader is OpenAI. Of that 40%, over 30% is them. But even over the past quarter, you look at folks like Anthropic going from 5% to 8% of businesses actually exploding and actually using it. And so that growth is, I think, fairly explosive. But the wild thing to me about this stat is this is not just like dollars net revenue retention. This is businesses that have bought at least one thing on it. In that set of businesses, there are folks spending tens of millions now per month on these services. And so I think that there is explosive potential for these to continue to grow. I think as AI is not just a way to be more productive, but it's a new way that products are getting built. I just think that's going to keep growing. And we've seen companies like, I think probably the fastest growing sector right now is probably these sets of vibe coding apps. So whether it's Lovable, Cursor, Cognition, different types of folks in that cohort, I think are all interesting variants of services that are really taking off.
Are there certain ones that are Ramp customers as well,
that
you can disclose?
It's all the above.
There you go. Good place to be.
Yeah,
no, for sure. And then how we talked a little bit about the AI products that you're building, but within Ramp, where are you finding more efficiency? And like, if you're a productivity company, are you using this internally to streamline your own procedures? Where are you looking at that?
So it's a combination of one. I think one metaphor which I do quite like is it's almost like giving folks like an Iron Man suit, so to speak. It's allowing people, whether it's sales folks who suddenly are booking, twice as many meetings. I think quota for our average sales rep is about 4 times our next closest competitor, and so I think if you adopt it well, you can be radically proficient. To even there's new types of things that weren't possible before. We're now at a scale where there's tens of thousands of calls with customers happening every month. There's no single person that could possibly listen to all of that, but an LLM can. And you can start to go do things like one of our most beloved teammates on the team is someone called Toby, which is like a digital, it's not a real person. Where like you can be like an SDR.
Toby's your first AI hire?
Yeah. It's like Toby's really popular, right? Like you can go and let's say you're a product marketer and you want to ask like, why did people pick Ramp over competitor X? And you can ask functionally at scale. 30,000 people, customers on a call, and you can hear all the reasons and cite to all the examples. And so there's actually new form factors of work that couldn't be done, where you don't need a random sample. You can sample all of the data at scale. And so there's types of work that I think it's really unlocking. But I think done right, it leads to effects like, look, even over the past 4 months, the average engineer at Ramp is shipping, I think 46% more PRs than they did even 4 months ago. And I think that's going to continue over the next I guess, trimester, quarter, whatever it is, but we're excited.
AI fintech company. Eric, thank you so much.
Thanks so much. This is a ton of fun.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.